Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everyone. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is Wednesday morning, 5:30 here in Calgary, Alberta, March 17th. I'm happy to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 15 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast, and I'm happy that you can join me this morning. You know, it's early, and with the time change that we just had, it feels like 4:30 to me. And so I'm just waking up and having a coffee, and I'm happy that you're here. And I do appreciate all the support and your friendship mainly. You know, it's awesome. We're looking at this week and last week. We're looking at an article I found called Understanding Crisis. I found it on the Child Welfare Information Gateway, and that was at www.childwelfare.gov. And you can go there and check it out. I had to type, it's publications. That's where I got it, in the publications. And you have to type in by letter. They go by letter. Of the alphabet, so the articles that you want to look at, you can pull up by just typing in under like the letter C. You could type in child abuse, or if you wanted to look at emotional abuse, you could type in E for emotional abuse and things like that. So this one I found, Understanding Crisis, is under U. So you type in, go under the letter U and type in Understanding Crisis, and you can bring it up, and all these related articles will be there, and anything that starts with a U, and you can pull that up for yourself. So it's a publication, and I pulled it right off. I just printed it out, and that's what we're looking at, Understanding Crisis. And this is when there's an intervention done by CPS and the crisis workers that go into a home to help a family learn how to cope and learn how to develop really their own problem-solving skills, right, as a family. And that way, you know, they can really be proactive in their own sort of situation, right, to help make their family, you know, a good family, right, a family that works together to problem solve, and so that when there is a crisis, you know, if another one comes up, they'll have the skills, or at least some of the skills needed to kind of get through it. And so there's acute crisis where we looked at that. There's crisis that just, you know, normal families have every once in a while. It can happen where, you know, for 4 to 6 weeks a family can just be in a crisis, but they normally have no problem coping, and they usually have really good problem-solving skills. So these are some crises that can happen. And then there was a chronic crisis, and my family suffered from chronic crisis. We were always in a crisis, and we went, you know, sometimes we'd go a year or so without a crisis, but then there'd be another crisis, and then 6 months later another crisis, and then 2 months later another crisis, and then maybe we would go a year without one, and then all of a sudden we'd go a whole year in crisis. So we were just always in crisis. And so I find this article very interesting for myself, and I hope it helps other people too. And this is not a professional show. I don't hold any professional counseling certificates or therapist certificates. So, you know, it's just me on Blog Talk Radio, and I just like to bring information to people. So if the topics of abuse bother you, please turn the show off, because you wouldn't be hurting my feelings at all. It's your right, and you have to listen at your own discretion, right? And I just ask everyone to do that, because no one wants to be uncomfortable. And I don't mind talking about abuse. I lived with it my whole life. I've had to deal with it my whole life, and so I don't mind talking about it, but lots of people do, and so I just, you know, that would not hurt my feelings at all. If the topic bothers you, you just turn it right off, no problem. And if you're a young person, you know, make sure you have someone to listen to this with you. And I know sometimes we don't have a parent who really cares or has time to listen to stuff with us, you know. So make sure you find someone who you trust, you know, a counselor at school, a school teacher, you know, a mentor, a coach, someone who might spend 15 minutes or so just to listen to an archive show with you sometimes, so that they can sort of see if this is something you should be listening to, because online safety for children is like tops for me, and I think that kids really have to be careful. There's a lot of really crazy people out there, and so I just for your own safety, I would ask that you would get someone to listen to this with you. And just because abuse is it's a sensitive and scary topic, and you might have questions that you might not know, you know, where to look for the answers. And if you have someone older who has you know, more knowledge on things, they might be able to help you find the answers, and then you won't be sitting there, you know, confused and wondering what I'm talking about. So that's why I say that every show. So Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we're going to get right into this. Yesterday we were looking at a 9-step crisis intervention model that they've come up with on this article, and step 1 was rapidly establish a constructive relationship, and we went through that. And step 2, we're just going to continue on. Elicit and encourage expression of painful feelings and emotions. Anger, frustration, and feelings related to the current crisis are the focus of intervention rather than issues in the past. Linkages to past crisis and repetitive, ineffective responses to problems can be explored at a later time. So they want to, I guess they try to get the family to talk about, their feelings and frustrations and what happened, what's going on in that current crisis, and look at that rather than the past stuff. And I think they do try to help people with the things that went on in the past as well. But I guess they really think it's important to focus on what's going on in the current crisis more so than looking at what happened in the past, right? Because the past is the past, but the current situation is what's at hand, so I can imagine that's why. Step 3, discuss the precipitating event. After rapport is established, the focus turns to the family perceptions of the situation, the chain of events leading up to the crisis, and the problem that set off the chain of events. Discussions examine when and how the crisis occurred, the contributing circumstances, and how the family attempted to deal with it. And step 4, assess strengths and needs. Family assessment of strengths and needs begins immediately and continues throughout crisis intervention. The crisis worker draws conclusions regarding the family's strengths and needs related to the current crisis, and with the family evaluates the potential for recovery. Client strengths are tapped to improve self-esteem while also providing energy and skills for problem solving. And step number 5, formulate a dynamic explanation. This step looks for an explanation not of what happened, but why it happened. This is the core of the crisis problem. The meaning of the crisis and its antecedents, as seen by the clients, are explored. Why do they ascribe that meaning or perceive it as they do? So they want to take a look at more like the question of why the crisis happened, not so much like what happened. And that way they can really look and see what the people are thinking, the family is thinking about it, right? And how they perceive why it happened, right? Step number 6 is restore cognitive functioning. In this step, the crisis worker helps the family identify alternatives for resolving the crisis. For example, reasonable solutions today which the family is motivated to work. And step 7, plan and implement treatment. The crisis worker assists the family in the formulation of short and long-term goals, objectives, and action steps based on what the family chooses as priorities. With a concrete plan of action, the family feels less helpless, more in control, allowing members to focus on action steps. Objectives and action steps need to be simple and easy at first, assuring client success, and the family members are responsible for action steps or homework. But the crisis worker continues to counsel them, seeks to help find appropriate resources in the community, and becomes the family's advocate. And that's what I really wish would have happened in our family. I think, my family could have used some help. And had they had, someone really, I think we needed a long-term crisis counselor, like somebody, a crisis worker who would stick with us for, a year or two, because my parents needed so much help. They did not come together as a married couple or against each other all the time. They never could problem solve together because every time they were in the same room, it was a big fight. And so, they used when people would come around, of course they would pull it together and everything would be great. And then the minute the people left, if it was a neighbor or a friend of the family or something, they would come around. Everybody would be happy because my mom would be happy and she'd get out the cookies and the coffee and everything would be just great, right? My dad would go and sit and sulk in his room or whatever he was going to do. And as soon as they left, it would all be back on again, So this is the thing. They were very good at we all were very good at stopping what we were doing, and really faking a lot of people out. And just, people just had really no idea what was going on because we could pull it together for periods of time. And then as soon as the people would leave, we were back at it. So, and because that was a learned behavior, my parents did that to us and taught us how to do that. And so even in my adult life, I can do that. I can easily go from sort of being in a bad state of mind, or at least I used to. I'm actually much better than I used to be. But back when I was having a lot of stress and a lot of problems in my life, just dealing with this, I could go from being really depressed, and if somebody showed up at the door and wanted to go do something, I'm fine, right? And then as soon as I'm home again, then it comes back, right? So that's a learned behavior, I'm sure of it. My parents really taught us well how to do that, and it fakes a lot of people out, and people don't really know then that what's going on in your real life, because you're able to shut off emotions really quickly, right? And shut off feelings, and it does, allow for people to not know what's really going on. And I think the social workers really didn't have a good clue what was going on in our home, and it's unfortunate that they couldn't have videotaped the family for about a year afterwards, or even 2 years, to see the level of abuse that was going on. It was pretty bad. Step 8, terminate. Termination occurs when the family achieves its pre-crisis level of stability. Crisis workers review with the family the precipitating event or events and responses, and the newly learned coping skills that can be applied in the future. The crisis worker assures that the family is scheduled for meetings with and committed to any necessary ongoing community services. And step number 9, follow-up. Crisis workers arrange for continuing contacts with families and referral sources on predetermined dates, or by saying, I'll be contacting you soon to see how you are doing, and this puts appropriate pressure on families to continue to work on the issues in a positive way. So that's quite interesting. Crisis intervention teams. In cases involving child abuse or neglect, there is frequent misunderstanding about the differences among investigation, psychological first aid, and rehabilitative crisis intervention. Each, however, plays a critical role in a team's response to child maltreatment. And ultimately, rehabilitative crisis intervention skills can significantly enhance investigative or psychological first aid approaches. So we got about 3 minutes left, and this part here looks quite interesting, the investigation, the psychological first aid, and then it goes on to talk about the rehabilitative crisis intervention, and then the article continues on with overview of teams related to CPS and specialized multidisciplinary teams and different things like that. We'll probably get through this by Friday, I'm sure. And it's quite interesting, and I just know that our family could have used some help, and my parents had the chance. They had a chance. They had to go to court, and they had to tell the judge that in order to keep their kids, they would go get counseling and go get help, and they didn't. And so I fully put that responsibility on their hands. They did not feel, for whatever reason, that what they were doing was wrong to their children. And even family members today have a hard time because we were brought up in that situation. That there's a lot of people in my family that think that it was okay to bash a kid in the head, and beat on a kid, right? But I don't mean a spanking. I'm talking a beating, and that's unfortunate, and it's just really sad. It happens in so many families. I know it does, and there's people, out there who believe that it's okay to do that to their children, and it's just not. It is abuse, and it's a real problem. And your children, if you know a child who you suspect is being abused, you have to make the right decision. You have to make the phone call. And if you're, someone in a family that knows a child is being abused, you have to do the right thing and make a phone call, because these children cannot look out for themselves. They don't have the ability to stand up for themselves. And so you have to do that for them. I know that I will, and that's my promise. If I suspect a child is being abused in any way, I will be making a phone call, because you can save a child's life, and you could save them from a life of hurt and pain and despair and desperation and sadness and grief and every bad thing that goes along with child abuse, leftovers, for adult survivors of child abuse. So thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and I am so happy to stand with them. I tell you, I'm just, the work being done is just awesome to raise awareness, to raise, for prevention, and, just to stop child abuse, education, awareness, prevention. That's what it's all about. You can check their website out, www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com, and April is Abuse Awareness Month, along with the National Child Abuse Awareness Month in April. Dreamcatchers has all kinds of great information on their website regarding that. They have a PDF newsletter that you can download and read at your own convenience, and I highly recommend it. There's all kinds of great ideas on how to get involved in your own community to stop child abuse, to really to prevent child abuse. So thank you so much for tuning in. And I have a book out. It's called A Life of Death: The Redemption. You can find it. It's at www.lulu.com/content/paperback book /A Life of Death: The Redemption, 8500324. You can get a hold of me if you want to pick up a copy of that. All the proceeds are going to Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. And that was my wish. The Dreamcatchers did not want that, and I did, so they honored my wish, and I'm so very happy about it. So all the proceeds will be going to them to help further education, awareness, and prevention of child abuse, which makes me so happy. And so thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. I'll be back on tonight. Child abuse prevention and human rights abuse prevention is up to us, and for a half hour, and I sure hope you can tune in live. And otherwise, take care. You're in my heart. You're in my prayers, and I thank you so much for tuning in and for being here with me, and your support and friendship just means everything. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.